to you by Green Fair Organic Cafe, A Plant-Based Diet, Mom's Organic Market, and the Evolution Vegan Academy. This segment is going to feature my friend and well-known personality with the Washington Post, Courtland Milloy. He's been with the Washington Post since 1975, and he's been on a plant-based journey for over a year now. So I'm going to let back to Chuck Carroll and Exam Room Podcast, and Chuck is going to pick up with the interviewing of Courtland Milloy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gwen, and welcome back to the Exam Room Podcast here at the virtual Fairfax Veg Fest. What an extraordinary event this has been. We just heard from Dr. Neil Barnard, and now we're getting the opportunity to hear from one of my favorite writers in the entire world. He has been, as Gwen said, writing for the Washington Post just for as long as I can possibly remember, and has one heck of a story of his own. I'm so grateful that he's here today, Mr. Courtland Milloy. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks. My pleasure to be here.
How are you doing with all of this? How are things at the home office?
Well, let me just say that this may be a virtual Veg Fest, but I can almost smell the broccoli, you know?
And you mentioned broccoli because I know that growing up, that was not your favorite thing to eat.
Yes, indeed. It felt like a curse of sorts because the food that I disliked the most was reputedly the best food for you. And that is how I ended up meeting Gwen Whitaker at Green Fair. I wrote a column about it back in 2017 and about this dislike for broccoli. What could I do? She invited me over to Green Fair, her cafe in Herndon, and prepared a meal that did not include broccoli, but was just as good for you. It had kale in it. So yes, that was the beginning, somewhere around maybe June 2017.
All right, let's get some baselines here. So at June 2017, how were you feeling physically? What was your health like?
Oh man, I was in a downward spiral. I think I was up to like 249, which might have been the most that I had weighed since ever. And blood pressure was up, cholesterol was up, but mostly the feeling of sluggishness. Getting into a car on the driver's side and having to take my hand and lift that left leg up into the car. And I played tennis, right? And that was like, oh my goodness, this is the beginning of the end. So that's how I was feeling. It was pretty low period. You know.
And you're still a relatively young guy, so to be having to lift your leg into the car at that age, that's pretty alarming, way beyond just tennis, I would assume.
Yes. Well, you know, this is a funny thing that the high blood pressure should have been enough. The cholesterol reading should have been enough. But it's funny the kind of things that catches your eye. I'll tell you, it wasn't really the leg lift into the car. I was at a grocery store and eggnog had become more like an addiction for me. I was at the grocery store. I fixated on the bottles of, or the cartons, the big cartons of eggnog. And I was going to get one, but a guy who's about half as tall as I am, weighed twice as much. And he moved right in like a fullback, grabbed up 4 cartons, left 2 for me, and he said to himself, I found her. No, we found her. We found our baby is basically what it's like, a love affair going on. And people around the grocery store stopped their carts and looked at who are these fat guys hugging on this eggnog? You know, that's what it was. It wasn't the leg. It was the sheer, like someone had turned a mirror on me and said, oh my goodness, look what you have become. It was an addiction.
Absolutely.
Sugar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
People just don't equate the fact that they can be addicted to food and beverages the same way that they are, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, things of that nature. Your vice was eggnog. My vice was Taco Bell, but I guarantee that those same pleasure centers in the brain were getting lit up when you would have your eggnog as when I was munching on my beef burritos.
yes, yes. I could wash down my beef burrito with eggnog.
So how
Well,
long was
I
it?
laugh now. I laugh now, but being helpless, being out of control is not a good feeling to eat when you don't want to. It's
Mm-mm.
like, hold on. It's just my hand reaching. I can't control this part. It was like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that was
It's a total eye opener. How long between that time with the eggnog love affair at the grocery store and when you wrote that column about broccoli? What was the timing there?
the eggnog came after, I think, the broccoli.
Ah,
Um, I mean, this is not an instant. I didn't flip a switch. It took, it took several months,
for sure.
and some help from some good friends over at Green Pericles, Gwen, the staff there, and people saying, keep at it. I did a 21-day kickstart, and just to kind of acclimate, to get over those first 3 days, where the taste buds are going crazy. It was helpful to have support. Yeah.
Let's talk about this because a guy who, just loves his eggnog, loves his burritos, you get this message from a woman who's like, "Hey, I know you don't like broccoli, but come out to my restaurant. It's a vegan restaurant. Let's see what we can do for you." What was running through your mind at that point? Were you like, "This vegan thing, get out of town"? Were you a little bit apprehensive?
Well, to hear Gwen tell it, she invited me 3 times before I said I was going to come out. I just, yeah, I could not conceive of this being anything good for me. And it's amazing how close I came to missing out on the whole deal. Most people don't give you three chances to come to dinner, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, it took 3 times, and the fact that she's a nice person, nice presentation, never like, oh, you stood me up, I'm gonna put poison in your food. Nothing like that. Very nice.
She
Um,
she will wear you down with kindness. That's the thing about Gwen is she knows what she's doing, but she is the sweetest person in the entire world.
and to pick up on that, people who I've met through her, including yourself, Chuck, um, there's some really good people. I mean, there's something about letting go of that meat, you know, killing that animal and eating it. It seems to do something to people's sense of humanity, if you will. I'm maybe making a causation when there's just a correlation, but I've noticed something. I built a birdhouse. It's out there, and I'm just hearing tweets, and I like that now. Before I might have taken Brock, get out of my window, birds. So
Yeah.
yeah, it changes. It changes, and she is very good.
She really is. So let's talk about how you then begin to transition. Did you expect to have as big of a change as you did when you first started out doing that 21-day program?
And no, and that is one of the most remarkable things. You can't tell people that they're going to feel better and have it stick because they really don't know what feeling better really is. To stop eating, to go plant-based whole food is to change your whole self from inside out. And what people would think I used to think that eggnog made me feel good, right? In fact, it was the best feeling that I knew of. But this was very different. I could not describe it. There was a lightness of being. There was what happens when you don't ache in places where you used to ache so much that you became used to it. That leg just pops up into the car by itself. You know, those kind of things. Yeah, and it happened really fast. You know, blood pressure went down first week, cholesterol was down second week. The weight was just, you know, coming off. And I need instant gratification. Of course, that's why I like eggnog. You know, you just pour it in and it's like, does its thing, satiating mostly what it does. But this was very different. This was like a new person.
Let's talk about that time that you realized that, hey, I can put my leg in the car and I don't have to lift this thing up. You know, like for me, it was the greatest feeling in the world when I could buckle an airplane seat, right? So how was that for you the first time that you realized my leg just got in the car almost on its own, no problem?
Right. It was really great. It was great. Now, I'm a natural worrier, and I almost didn't really believe this was happening. You know, I have done little diet type things. I have even tried just going fruit and vegetables for a while. And without a structured program, without support, it would just boing right back and then worse than it was. So I was very concerned about that. But I found that two other things, the exercise and the meditation, you know, perfect complements, you know, and it helps with sustaining the thing without a lot of work. If the food is not good and it's too much work, I'm not going to do it. I just know that. I'm old enough to know that. But I found that there are lots of good foods, you know, even desserts. And again, exercise, you don't have to do a whole lot. You know, you get in that 20-minute walk, you know, maybe hit a few, you know, weights, and you're kind of good to go. Drink a lot of water. Or you don't have to drink a lot of water. You can eat a lot of vegetables.
They are quite hydrating. I got a glass of water right here, though. But let's talk about your total weight loss. You said you started close to 250, like 249?
Yeah, 249.
Where are you today?
Today it's 210.
Nice.
But I was down to 195 because I was so determined to break that 200. But then I start creeping back. And I have to put that psychologically, you know, in place that, you know, I'm just trying to get back down to like 175. Doctor says, no, you don't need to do that. You're, you know, I'll be 69 this year. So who knows what the weight is going to be. I'll put in the effort and let the weight take care of itself. What I do when the belts are, I'll hit another notch in the belt, put another hole in it, cut off the end, you know? So, you know.
So you can't go back.
Can't go back. I could pull and squeeze it in, but no, it's, you know, it's good. Now, but I want to make clear, it wasn't to get the leg in, to get all these things done, all the progress. There is a state of mind of being in the world that if it's only about vanity, it's not going to stick with me. You know, I mean, I like the vanity part, but that won't sustain it. There's a place of being in relationship to other people where you do what you're doing, Chuck. You try to help somebody else with the message. You know, as much as you want to focus on yourself when you're doing these things, the trick to, if you call it a trick, to sustaining it is to get out of self, and reach out to other people. And there are plenty of other people. This virus, this COVID-19 that exploits, chronic diseases. Oh man, it's just wearing people out, and the diabetes, well, all of the things, high blood pressure, everything that I had except the diabetes, I didn't. I was probably borderline on that stuff, but.
Well, let's talk about that, because I know that here in the DC area, you live in Prince George's County, which is a minority majority county. And it also happens to be one of the areas that's hardest hit by COVID-19. You just see thousands of cases there. And we're not talking about asymptomatic people. We're talking about, these are the patients that go to the hospital, wind up in the ICU, wind up on the ventilators. The African American community has been disproportionately hit hard by this virus. As somebody who lives in Prince George's County, is African American, how concerning to it? How concerned are you about the diets that you're seeing in the county? And even we can go so far as to talk about the lack of quality food that's available there.
Yeah, it's almost hard. This is something that I'm struggling with as a writer, because I have been talking about how this plant-based whole food diet can reverse diabetes. It can get rid of your high blood pressure. It can do all sorts of things, lower your cholesterol. I've been saying that throughout 2019, and a lot of pushback from people. Hey, don't be telling us how to eat. We like what we like. We're meat eaters and stuff. And to see this virus come in and start decimating a population of people who had already had diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol problems, it's certainly not a time to say, I told you so. Absolutely not that. It's certainly not it's certainly hard to say, if you had eaten this, you might have fared better, because you don't want to blame people. I know it's really hard. I know that a lot of the people work in jobs that have to do with dealing with people. There are a lot of bus drivers, transit workers. There are people working in the hospitals. And there've been a problem with the protective equipment. There are people who do your Uber driving, there are people who work at the hotel where the big Republican confab, I call it, the CPAC, met, where the first case of the virus came from. It came from a Republican convention that was held in Prince George's County, first case. But that's where a lot of Black people work, at the hotels, front counters, taking care of the rooms and things like that. So, and they end up being called the essential, workers. So they did not get to work from home like I am right now. So there are a number of things that went into this, but the fact that so many people in the county are obese. I mean, you're talking about 60% of people are, and then there's a dialysis, clinic right next to the Popeyes, and it's like there's no exercise, no gyms like you have in some of these other places. So there are a lot of structural things, but if people want to focus on right now, we got to deal with systemic racism, structural racism. Fine. There's something we know about economic disparities in this country, and it's real. But while you fight that, what else can you do? And this is where I have to say, you want to get some vegetables on that plate. And I think that people might be a little more receptive now, understand what this was all about. Having 100 people die of some virus is not the way, you want it. I was hoping that maybe the lifting that leg up in the car, people would identify. But I'll tell you, Chuck, the food industry, people get on me and say, you telling us how to eat. No, we don't want to listen to you telling us how to eat. We're grown people. And my thing is, the food industry is telling you how to eat. They're telling you what to eat. They're telling you when to eat. All these burgers, all this stuff, fried stuff, barbecue, all the ads at the sporting events,
Oh yeah.
I think it was Michael Greger said, you never saw a sweet potato ad sponsoring the Super Bowl.
No, not a 30-second ad, certainly not the halftime show, none of it.
Right.
One of the things that you just said, really struck me, is that you see the Popeyes chicken and right next to it is the dialysis center. Before you made the change to your own diet and really got in touch with your own health, would that have even been a blip on your radar, or would it have been just so normal you didn't give it a second thought?
Exactly, that's it. It's horrifying to think how easily it is to normalize, the very juxtaposition, because I didn't know that food was a culprit in diabetes. I did not know that food could be a medicine that would reverse it. You just think that, well, what did they call it when I was growing up? Sugar diabetes. It's just something that the old people got. Nothing you can do about it. Great grandma had it. Grandpa had it. Whatever. You may get it, you may not. There's nothing you can do about it. So, yeah, and to see it right next to these things, the Gwen pointed this out to me too. You have your CVS, your dialysis and your Popeyes, all within a. You can hit one. Start with the fried stuff, end up in the dialysis, and then going back and forth to the get your meds. Insulin, I found out, is just incredibly expensive too. My goodness, the money that people would save with good health. I don't want to preach on it.
No, it's something that I would assume that the vast majority of people listening to this, watching this right now on Facebook, certainly understand the connection there between diet and health. My question to you is this: if somebody is living in an area where there isn't a really good grocery store, okay, it's one of those so-called food deserts, but they want to make the change, they want to really take charge of their health. Do you believe that it's possible that even given those circumstances that somebody can move themselves in the right direction?
Yes, it's possible. Not saying it's easy. But one of the things that part of this is political. People have to speak up, kind of get organized and say, we want better stuff in our neighborhoods. The problem is that sometimes people don't even know what they need. So you need people to come in, and say, fortunately, there are activists, and there are people, a growing number of people who, again, want to share what they've learned about this. You have groups, nonprofit groups, that are bringing vegetables into the corner store. They're even into those corner liquor stores in the food deserts, making vegetables and fruits available at discount prices. And what people have found is that given access, people will buy that. They want it. And because it's not like greens, tomatoes, carrots, or foreign food. These are the foods that this is what we were eating before we were eating those other things, They're inexpensive. In Washington, D.C., there there were trucks of vegan, this was in the 70s. And people were thought to be hippie kind of people, bringing the bean pie and all those kind of things. And that's what people used to eat until McDonald's moved into the inner cities and made it much more convenient, started sponsoring civil rights organizations. You look at the back of a NAACP program and there's a big McDonald's ad. They were giving out franchises to, African Americans. So all of a sudden the green stuff gave way to whatever they put in those meat patties, and things changed like that. But yes, people will they will change. And the point is, if you can convince people that their lives are worth it, that there is a better way, then people will plant their own gardens if that's what it takes. They'll do whatever it takes. Once you let them know that eggnog is really it's like going under your kitchen sink and pulling out some of those chemicals and stuff and drinking that.
Mm-hmm.
That's about how much nutrition it is, you get out of that. You let people know that they're being gamed by the system, and nobody likes to be had. You point out what the con is, people will say, oh, I get it, and they'll start remembering what grandma used to cook, go out into the garden.
Well, now there's an interesting point that you raised, because you also mentioned genes earlier during this interview. And I think a lot of people, when you were talking about sugar diabetes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people think, well, if my grandparents had it and my parents had it, of course I'm going to get it. You and I both know more control over that than we ever possibly realized. But I think that people might have this reluctance to change their diet also because you're asking them to break up with grandma's recipe, because you didn't just inherit grandma's genes, you inherited her eating habits, you inherited her recipe book. All of those things got handed down to you. So yeah, you got her genes, but her genes for diabetes were activated because of the way that she was eating. You've got the genes, you're eating the same way. Of course, your risk for having diabetes is through the roof at that point. What would your message be to somebody then who is like, you're asking me to turn my back on my grandma, and they almost take it personally? Is there any way to comfort somebody to make them feel a little bit better about that?
Yes, but it won't be me. I would go to the granddaughter, the little one who's learning that there's a better breakfast than stopping at the corner store eating Cheetos and an orange soda, because now you're starting to get more nutrition education in the schools. And you let the granddaughters, the grandsons deal with those cultural things, because that's really tough. I mean, it's beyond my skill set to be able to tell someone, I've had this epiphany. I know the right way to do it, Boy, nobody likes that self-righteous stuff. But for a grandparent to hear a little kid express concern, saying this is not good for you, I think that had to do as much with getting people to stop smoking as the Surgeon General's report back in the 60s. The kids heard that it's bad, and they said, oh, that's bad for you, and all of us want to be role models. We want to be held in high esteem by youngsters. We don't want kids hanging their head in shame. The little children, they have a lot of power, and because they are in fact going to be the future. We're making great progress, by the way. Not that Burger King's Impossible Burger is the end all and be all, but there's progress made, and the young people, I think, will be carrying that over the goal line for us. You'll still be around because you're so young, you know. So.
Well, thank you. I hope so. I honestly believe that the tide is turning. You're seeing more and more people, as the kids say, get woke to this kind of stuff. And I think that that's really critically important. I was just reading an article where Snoop Dogg was giving out vegan burgers to the frontline workers. And so, yeah, again, it was something akin to the Impossible Whopper, but just the fact that you have Snoop Dogg giving out any sort of thing that is plant-based, I think speaks volumes and will definitely resonate with that younger generation.
That's right. That's right. All he has to do is keep those big cigars he smokes, you know, back, and let the kids.
That's a conversation for a whole other podcast, Courtland. Let's kind of end on an inspirational note, because I know that we have to wrap things up. We have you're going to be speaking with Lisa Fontaine here in just a little bit, but let's end with this, because I know part of your plant-based journey includes one particular slip up. I believe it was maybe last Thanksgiving, and talk about how it was that you were able to, you know, pull yourself back up, get yourself back on that wagon, and you've been good ever since. Because I so fear, and I know that I experienced this a time or two myself, that when I slipped up, man, I felt like that's it. The wheels have come off and there's nothing I can do. But you were able to get yourself back on track. How were you able to do that? What was that slip up?
Well, yes. Thanksgiving. Now, I've been living in something of a cocoon around food. You know, my beans, you know, my celery, my greens. So no problem. You know, one of the things they tell you, get rid of all your junk, your snack foods, you know, all of the little trigger devices and stuff like that. So I'm done with that. But then you go to Thanksgiving dinner and there's all this stuff, you know. I know I'm not going to eat the meat because it looks like carcass, you know. Bird, it might as well get up and walk. I don't want to even see it, you know. But I had no idea I would react to macaroni and cheese the way I did. It was like bubbling up a little bit, a little cheesy thing. And I must tell you, there wasn't much, I didn't put up much of a fight. I just said that I'm going to have a little bit, just the taste, you know. And it ignited that thing like it was a firecracker, you know. And it was like, so next thing I know, I'm eating a whole lot more than I wanted. And it turns out that after the first bite, it really wasn't that good anymore. And it started almost immediately, you start feeling like clogged. You know, this is cheese. My body's, wait, what is this going down here? So, you know, I don't want to say that it was guilt that made you come back, but it was like, whoa, there's a lot of work that went into getting to this point. And let's not, I think actually it might have been a good thing. Sometimes a little slip is a good thing to kind of give you let you know where you really are. You know, I'm not as invulnerable as I thought. You know, I had some weak points, and they needed to know that. I've heard about people slipping, eating one of those big cheeseburgers after being, you know, clean, and ended up in the ER. You know, because you ignite the body. You know, when you put that stuff, body goes into shock. It says, "Oh my goodness, this is just nasty."
Oh,
So
they wound up in the ER, like after eating one cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
You clean now because you know what's in the cheeseburger now. It wasn't meant to go into a clean body, that's for sure. So the body has a way of saying, you know, don't do that again. You know? And with the macaroni and cheese, it was like you wake up the next day and you're still feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so you just go back to what you're doing. You go back you just reset, and learn from the experience and try not to be, as I will be, hard on myself and stuff like that. I'm from the South, deep South, guilt and shame, cheese, shame and guilt macaroni.
Well, I think it's safe to say that come Thanksgiving this year, you probably won't be putting any of that mac and cheese on your plate. Do you think that things would have turned out differently if it were a sip of eggnog as opposed to macaroni and cheese? Your first love, that eggnog?
I've focused on eggnog. To me, eggnog is it's like Drano in a creamy carton. I don't look at it as anything but poison, I had not done that for macaroni and cheese. I hadn't put those things. But no, that would be the last thing,
Yeah.
To go back on the eggnog would be like total failure. I don't know how you come back from that, but that's a baseline thing. No, don't do that. So
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I think that it is important, though, that message, that people understand that if you do have that slip, you can bounce back. You don't have to be all the way off the rails. Like, it's okay. You're human, as they say. To err is human, and now you're back, and you know that you know what you don't want to do moving forward, and so you take that with you. I can't see you eating macaroni and cheese again.
No, because here's the other thing. Don't get away from that support system too. Don't think that you can do it. Certainly at this point, but why at any point would one want to go it alone? On a journey like this. This kind of journey is meant to be shared, with people. And yeah, people in the family who do eat the mac and cheese, they could look at me and say, "Hey, he's not eating it, and he's doing this." So you want to be like that, So. Yeah.
Well, last question is, have you written about your love affair with broccoli now in your columns?
No, I have rough drafts. They're not ready for print yet.
Right.
I'm working toward it.
All right. Well, I look forward to maybe one day seeing that headline come out for you. But until then,
I'll make sure you get a copy, Chuck.
You're a good man. I appreciate that so much. Courtland Milloy from the Washington Post. You have a heck of a story, and thank you for being such an inspiration for us today.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right, and we will be right back. Actually, Courtland will be right back here at 12:30 with Lisa LaFontaine from the Humane Rescue Alliance. And this is just a reminder, this phenomenal Fairfax Veg Fest is being put together with the good folks at Green Fair Organic Cafe, A Plant-Based Diet, Mom's Organic Market, and the Evolution Vegan Academy. A lot of hard work went into making this event go from a in-person event to a virtual event, so we can still bring you all of this wonderful inspirational knowledge, nutrition knowledge, and just get you feeling good and coached up and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. But Courtland, stick around. You are coming right back with Lisa here at 12:30.
Thanks.